Hear ye, hear ye. Armenian genocide is a problem, but not the continued slaughter of blacks. Don't mess with Asians. Literally. And those burgers you love, pretty soon you'll have to pay about $1 million for one. Don't believe me? Check this out. Hello, my people. It's your Negro with APTitude and host of the BLACKboard, Mickee Lee. How y'all doing? It's time for another weekend wrap-up. It's been a while since I've done one. As I've mentioned in some earlier posts, I'm trying to finish up some training so I can offer you prettier-looking YouTube videos that hopefully will increase our community rather quickly. But in the meantime, we're going to have to go with the okie doke. Still, the cerebral level will remain the same. As you can see from the headlines here, there are some things I want to talk with you about while the rest of the nation is focused on the Derek Chauvin outcome and the unfortunate death of little Ma'Khia Bryant, the young lady, the 16-year-old. She was not a woman, she was a child that was killed, and there are a variety of people who are to blame. I don't think the police officer is, but I'm not going to do a separate post on that. What I am going to say is that we adults, whatever background you are that is part of the Negro with APTitude community, whatever background you're from, whatever race you're from, ethnicity you're from, and even religious viewpoint you come from, we must do better to provide an environment for our children that is at least as good as the one that we grew up in. Now, I know there's some adults that have had some pretty traumatic upbringings, but the truth is, up until about 1960, people could count on pretty stable neighborhoods throughout the land in order to raise children. Now, it's unfortunate that children see nothing but failing adults around them, and then they wind up in a situation where they feel like they have to defend themselves, and their nearest adult relative is not a wise person and looking out for their best interests, so they wind up getting killed. That's all I'm going to say on the Ma'Khia Bryant situation for now. Now, over to these headlines. I want to talk with you about them because these things will affect our lives as Black folks. And for those of you who are trying to follow Christ, I want to remind you that on this channel, I try to show how things are aligned to have Black people in a constant state of upheaval, while other people who are coming from far less aggressive and life-threatening situations are given all the investment, all the social and political, legislative, and judicial power that they need to be successful in the United States, or to at least think of America as a friend. They all eat off the table that ADOS built, but none of them are willing to share with ADOS, not even crumbs. Now, I'm going to get into this stuff from both the natural and the spiritual. But make no mistake, all three of these headlines will have very strong repercussions in the Black community if we're not careful. Biden recognizes Armenians, but not Blacks. Don't mess with Asians. It's the law. Get your burgers while you can. I really mean that. Here we go. Just recently, President Joe Biden acknowledged fully the Armenian genocide that occurred in 1915. Now, some folks place the dates as between 1915 and 1917. Others place it as occurring over several years from 1915 to 1923. This is considered part of World War I, and basically Armenians who were residing in areas run by Turkey, which is was part of the Ottoman Empire. They marched out roughly about 1 million, some say as high as 1.5 million Armenians from Asia Minor, and they forced them to march to the Syrian desert, I believe, where they were later killed. Now, there's a lot of dispute about this issue, and some say that the catalyst for it was Armenian treachery against the Turks. Now, others say that treachery was nothing more than rumor. I'm not here to get into any of that. What I am pointing out is that the President of the United States, in a move that has not been done by any other president, formally acknowledged the Armenian genocide. What does this do? It, first of all, cements it in the history of the Armenian people and the world. And by doing so, he immediately rattled the cage of Turkey. Now, many of you may not follow international politics very closely. I know I generally don't. So I've had to do a little research on this to bring this story to you and explain why I'm bringing this story to you. So as we do in the weekend wrap up, this is a high level overview. If you want to know more about it, please do your own research and feel free to comment in the comment section so that we all can learn more. So back to the high level. Now, by formally acknowledging the Armenian genocide, what this did was to, number one, cement it in the history of the Armenian people. What does that mean? It means it gives credence to their version of events. Pay attention to that phrase. It gives credence to their version of events. Then it also rattled the cage of Turkey. Why is that important? Turkey is in the Middle East and has been historically known as an ally of the United States. Turkey has been informally accused of this genocide against the Armenians, which occurred roughly 106 years ago. This is also important. 106 years ago, Black people who are told to just get over it. And our stuff is occurring every day. Let me not digress. So, when he rattled the cage of Turkey, an ally that is in the Middle East, that the United States needs in the Middle East, the Turks have fired back, basically saying, you are in no position to tell us what our history is. This is critical because of the fact that China is also saber-rattling. In fact, they're not only saber-rattling out in the open, but as the Chinese government has historically done, they are stringing a pearl necklace around the neck of the United States and getting ready to choke us off. They have created their own currency. They are also creating their own digital currency. There are a number of countries who, for the past 5 years, I believe it is, have signed up to use the Chinese currency. And what does this mean? It means the American dollar is formally no longer being recognized as the fiat currency of the world. What does that mean? It means that when you go abroad, people are not necessarily going to accept the dollar, or certainly not give you the buying power with the dollar that they once did. And all of the money that is being poured into the U.S. economy and globally means that the dollar is worth less and less and less. And many of you may not realize this, but the dollar isn't backed by anything but the brand of the United States. What does that mean? A brand is a concept, and it's only as good as the psychology behind it. All right? Let me give you a brief example. If a person you know has a good reputation, they have a good brand. You believe that in interactions with this person, it will be a fair situation, a win-win situation, and therefore you are willing to risk interaction with this person or organization because they have a brand based on integrity. Conversely, if there is a person or an organization you know of that is always shady, then you are hesitant to risk any interaction, let alone resources, with that person or organization, because you know the likelihood of you getting shafted is very high. I'll give you another brief example that exemplifies both things. When we go traveling to various countries, one of the things we learn when we leave the United States and when we leave, quote unquote, Western societies, is we have to be ready for the grip. What's the grip? So if you're not paying close attention in Mexico, where I came from just as recently as February, you'll wind up paying $30 for a few things of candy and then find another store not too far away where that same stuff is only worth about $1. Okay? And so when you leave and you go into certain societies, you know they're not going to print the prices for you. You know you may not get back the proper change. You know, if you go to Morocco, for example, where I went a couple of years ago, they're going to charge you for everything from telling you what the weather is to what time it is. There's no such thing as free in Morocco. Not to say those aren't lovely people, but everybody's on the take, including the little kids. All right? So this is an example of the brand. It's a beautiful country, but the folks act a little shady, so just be ready, right? So it's the same thing. The United States is a brand. It's a concept, but it isn't backed by anything like gold. And much of the land of the United States doesn't belong to the U.S. It's been bought by foreign interests, including China. China, who the United States antagonizes and is in an antagonistic relationship with quite frequently. What does this have to do with black folks? Well, a couple of things. President Biden has taken a huge risk with international relations by formally recognizing Armenia, the genocide of the Armenians. So he has given cover to the Armenian plea, even though it happened over 106 years ago and not in the United States. And he has risked the relationships of the Middle East, of his ally in the Middle East, Turkey, in order to give them this cover. But here in the United States, where black genocide is continuing, and oh yes, I know some will devalue that because they'll say, what about black on black crime? What about black on black crime? When we can point to white on everybody crime, we can point to Latino on Latino crime, we can point to Asian on Asian crime, Native American on Native American crime, etc., etc., etc. You know, people usually hurt the people they're closest to, and who are the people they're in the closest proximity to normally? Other people like themselves. Okay? So anytime, black genocide, ADOS genocide is brought up, then there's always some excuse, right? Some deflection. And the best that President Biden has done so far is to say that he will back a study about reparations. But that doesn't mean he's going to sign any bills. Here's the next part of that. Armenians are Christians, by and large. The Turks are Muslims, by and large. There's a lot of Armenians in the United States, especially in Southern California. It is a very closed ethnic group, very closed. I've met a number of Armenians, quite lovely people, but very closed. Christians as a whole allow this type of thing from various Christian ethnics, whereas Black people are not recognized as Christians by and large by Christendom. I mean, they know we're Christians, but they don't really recognize us as Christians, because if they did, they'd have to recognize the Christian genocide against other Christians, which has been happening in the United States and the Americas for the past 500 years. So here you have another set of Christians coming in the United States, maintaining a closed ethnic enclave and a closed, quote unquote, Christian practice. These are the last days, folks. And what I want Black people to understand is this. Even though we have been brought to the brink of extinction. We are the one group in the world, and I say the only group in the world, that generationally the Lord has been able to count on to bring about a level of unity among the brethren. It doesn't happen as a group, as a collective, with anybody else. And I would like to encourage you strongly to hold on to Jesus Christ regardless of what's happening on this earth. It is not like I want anybody to go to hell. I most certainly do not. But the issue is this. We are alone in our understanding and practice of Christianity. And it is my belief that we are completely distinct in this area because of a special DNA, a special secret sauce, if you will, that the Lord has put in us that apparently is not in other groups. And I'm also stating to our non-Black brethren, whether they be Armenian, Chinese, Japanese, Korean, Indian, with a feather or a dot, whomever you are, and you're a non-white, quote unquote non-white, although an Armenian is white, okay? All of these other ethnic enclaves that what I'm talking about, and you have Christians, you claim to be Christians, it is time for you to show and prove. It is time for you to stop hiding behind an immigrant status or a non-quote unquote white status. It is time for you to pick up your cross and follow Christ, and also help to lift the burdens of others, and particularly Black folks who have done so much to shelter you in the name of Christ. These are the last days. So that's what we need to pay attention to with this Armenian genocide. Again, I don't promote and am not happy that anyone has gone through these atrocities. What I'm noting is how the world carries the sorrow for anybody but Black folks. In our next story tonight, we're going to take a look at the anti-Asian hate bill, or let's see the formal name of the bill, the No Hate Act, that was recently passed overwhelmingly in the Senate. It's on its way to the House, where it is also expected to pass overwhelmingly. For you Black conservatives out there, I want you to understand that it's already passed overwhelmingly with bipartisan support in the Senate, and it's expected to do the same in the House. So while you derail Black people, most of you Black conservatives, while you derail Black people, undermine Black people, disparage, disrespect Black people, and you are highly ignorant of your own history, let alone what is currently being done by this country to repair every other group. And you stand on Capitol Hill, idiot Herschel Walker, and other idiots who stood on Capitol Hill saying that black people do not deserve reparations. In the meantime, with scarcely a march, no burning down of buildings, no riotous behavior, no destruction of property, and only 3,800 hate crimes, quote unquote, hate crimes, although overwhelmingly there is no proof for the vast majority of these quote unquote hate crimes that the victim, was targeted specifically because they are Asian. The AAPI group, now hear me clearly, y'all, especially you people of color. The AAPI group got together, and this includes people who are historically enemies of one another. The Chinese were at one time under Japanese rule. They haven't forgotten it. In mainland China, they don't really like the Japanese and vice versa. Then there are beefs involving the Koreans. And then there is the overall disparagement of the browner Southeast Asians like the Vietnamese and Cambodians and so forth and so on, who have also been done dirty by the superpowers in the area. But over here in the United States, these are AAPIs, baby. Better not mess with us. And for you people of color, you black folks that just keep calling yourselves people of color, I want you to look very closely at the headlines. It doesn't say stop hate against people of color. It doesn't say stop black and yellow hate against black and yellow people. It doesn't say stop hate against the Rainbow Coalition, minorities, or the new minority majority. It states specifically and exclusively stop Asian hate. And I repeat, even though the studies show that the vast majority of quote unquote hate crimes against these folks, it's not been proven that the victim was chosen specifically because they are Asian. However, because I'm dealing with black folks who like to slurp up the people of color rhetoric without looking around to see how you're getting played. However, at the same time that the Chinese in particular were bitching and moaning about it being called the Wuhan virus, and if you will check back on the internet, you will find out it was the Chinese TV that first called it the Wuhan virus. They were bitching and moaning because it's called the Chinese virus. They were bitching and moaning because it was called a number of things that had to do with China or Asians. They didn't have no problem blaming the COVID, the Rona, on the Africans. Now, I've reported this to you last year. Okay? They didn't have no problems blaming this on the Africans. And what they did was beat people in the street. That's right. Chinese men, these little Chinese folks that, you know, they're so humble and they're the model minority and we just need to protect them. They didn't have no problem taking bats and clubs and belts and anything else they could find and accosting random Africans on the street. They didn't have no problem at all quarantining these same Africans in their apartments. And when I say quarantine, I don't mean the American style where we say, yeah, we're going to stay home, you know, when we're not going to a Whole Foods or Trader Joe's to get our food. We're going to stay home when we're not taking a little stroll to the park or walking on dark. No, when you are quarantined in China, they put a board over your door. You're not going in or out. They put ankle monitors on you. You leave, and very, very bad things happen to you. Now, this is what they do to their own people. And all you have to do, again, is check the net that people from inside China very bravely put up these videos to show people what was happening in the early weeks of the quote-unquote pandemic. So while the Chinese had absolutely no problem targeting people specifically because they are black, in this case, African, which is not the same thing as ADOS, but in the same family, same racial group, specifically because they were black. And they only had 3,800 incidents that they could report here in the United States. And it hasn't stopped them from choking out sisters who come in their stores, come in their nail salons, come in their beauty supplies. Hasn't stopped them from acting a fool with black dudes that come into their liquor stores, come into their restaurants, come into a wide variety of businesses that Asians own. Didn't stop them from shooting people in the head like the little girl Natasha Harlins. Didn't stop them from shooting folks like the dude in New York, the Asian that shot that African immigrant in New York. Didn't stop any of these things. But here in the United States, baby, Asia is boss. And even though the Asians, as an average household income, have more money and education than their white counterparts, we got to treat them with kid gloves, and we have to protect them because they just, small, frail people, and we got to protect them. And when you look at the recent studies as what is being called a quote-unquote hate crime, you're really talking about what they perceive to be things like slurs and being shunned in public. So what does that mean? You cross the street, I cross the street, so now I've shunned you? What does that mean? A virus breaks out and it's supposed to have something to do with China. So for a few weeks, I don't go to Chinatown. And so now I've shunned you. But in the meantime, you can speak Vietnamese, you can speak Korean, you can speak Chinese, you can speak Japanese and talk about me and my blackness. Or you can come bring your behind over here from India like I've run into a number of you all. And you have the gall and audacity to make anti-black statements? You mean like that? And so I call you a beard. Words I don't try not to use very often anymore. So look, black folks, I want to bring this story to you because of two main things. As I told you, in the natural, these folks haven't had to hardly shake a drum, and the United States jumped, even though China is one of its biggest enemies, okay? If China is one of the countries in which it has the most antagonistic relationships. But it jumped, and it passed this legislation, even though what these folks are calling hate crimes, and yes, there have been a few people, at least about a dozen or so, that have been killed recently, and that is tragic. Any loss of life, especially in that manner, is tragic. But we're talking about the overall arc here. The Asians have had no problem being anti-black. And then they have the gall to call the pot. It's the pot calling the kettle racist. Okay? So, my advice to you is to be very, very careful, because what is brewing up here is the same playbook the Mexicans have used, the same playbook the Muslims have used. Even if you're telling the truth about these people, they are now protected just like sanctuary cities and states, and the other existing anti-quote-unquote hate laws that have nothing to do with black people in specific, but can be used to hang you up for what would otherwise be just, hey, I don't particularly care for you, you don't care for me, so, we're going to stay out of each other's way. Not anymore. Be careful, black folks. In our final story tonight, y'all, I want to give you an update on food availability in the United States. Now, if you have been following this channel for a while, you know that I have a series called Waste Not Wednesdays. I haven't produced that series in a little while, but there is a playlist available that you can check out. And I've also done a few stories on food availability in the weekend wrap-up, as well as a couple of standalone videos. It would behoove you to check those out. There's some recent legislation that you need to be aware of. For example, in Oregon, they are strongly considering initiatives that would ban animal slaughter and breeding and animal husbandry. What does this mean? It means it would make it a lot harder in order to raise animals for consumption, for human consumption. So your pigs, your lambs, your cows, whatever, it will place a very great strain and burden on the ranchers, and would in effect, the idea behind it is to eliminate meat as a food product altogether in the United States and in many Western countries. There are initiatives happening in the UK, the United Kingdom, Ireland, Scotland, and even in England itself that in effect do the same thing. Now, on the one hand, you guys know that I'm an animal lover. So on the one hand, I kind of welcome this because the main reason why there is enough leverage for this type of initiative to very possibly pass is because of all of the rampant animal abuse that is involved with large-scale animal agriculture. Pigs being put in crates so small they can't even open their mouths without touching the bars. They can't turn around, lay down, or whatever. And then they're viciously prepared for slaughter and mistreated the whole time. They're even fed other pigs, other pig byproducts, the dead pigs, instead of actual food, and then we're turning around eating this stuff. I hope it's no surprise to anybody, and I also hope I haven't caught you during your morning bacon or your afternoon BLT. Then, of course, there's the rampant abuse of the cows and the horrible, things they go through, and even the babies are not off limit as they are consumed for veal and horribly mistreated, all around the world of that type of agriculture. So on the one hand, it would eliminate food as a product. The problem, of course, with that is the animal agriculture could very easily be cleaned up and returned to local sourcing, which is absolutely the best because, in general, the animals are far better treated and there is less hormones and so forth injected into those products. So if you do eat meat from animals, then you would ingest less contamination that would in turn cause your body problems. But the big picture that I want you to see is this. This is white folks-ish. All right? Now, white people don't see it that way. They don't recognize themselves as the purveyors of this ish. All right? But you can believe that if these were black people passing these laws and coming up with these initiatives, they would recognize it quick, fast, and in a hurry. But what is being done is to lessen the amount of food products that are available worldwide. Why is this important? Again, this is all pointing to the last days. The same thing with the jab or not to jab. That is the question. A vaccine for a health threat that in a year and plus has, it's about 2 million plus deaths across the world. That's less than 1% of the world's population. And yes, there are quote unquote people who are infected, but largely the percentage has not changed at all. It stayed between 1 and 2%. So you have a 98 to a 99% chance of overcoming the COVID if you should catch it. Yes, it is sad that people may die of the COVID, but again, people die every day of all kinds of things, and nobody shuts down people's businesses or puts people in jeopardy of being homeless, jobless, turning out people onto the street who are then so hopeless they feel like they don't have anything left to lose, so they come and jack your stuff. Now you're going to suddenly be so concerned about the animals that you want to eliminate all animal products. And in the meantime, you have Bill Gates, who has bought up over 100 million acres of land, and he's heavily invested in the Impossible Burger, which is lab-based meat. And then there are all the stories about the chemicals that even go into vegetables. Now, if you would read your Bibles, and I know you don't want to, but everything that's going on here is nothing more than a confirmation of the Word of God. And if you would read your Bibles, He will give you the peace that surpasseth all understanding. He would also help you to disengage your mind and your soul and spirit from this world. And He will teach you how to watch it from afar, so to speak, so that you navigate understanding what's about to go down without getting upset at people who are caught up in the matrix and they're not, yet awake. You don't get mad. You don't hate them. But you navigate with the cunning and the savviness of the serpent, right? We're supposed to be as wise, gentle as the dove, and as wise as the serpent. Black people have the gentle as the dove part down pat, especially when it comes to other people. We just need to be that same way with each other, but we are not as wise as the serpent. That's the reason why this channel exists anyway. All of this is occurring in order to greatly reduce the amount of food that is available, so that you will be in a position, if you're not growing your own food, to have to rely on the government to feed you. That's what the universal basic income is about as well, that Garcetti down there in LA has talked about passing to help the homeless. Now, $1,000 a month for what? Average apartment in LA is something around $1,100 a month. What you gonna live in for $1,000 a month? Maybe somebody's room in somebody's house. I don't know. Anyway, it's another story. But I want you guys to take some time and do a little research on your own so you can get the bigger picture about what's happening with food production in the United States that is being harmed by quote unquote natural events. God, what do they say? Acts of gods, hurricanes and flooding and hailstorms and a variety of things over the last 5 years that have decimated crops. Even floods that have killed millions and millions of livestock. Then you have when the Rona hit, they buried or destroyed millions and millions and millions of acres of crops, supposedly contaminated, poured out hundreds of millions of gallons of milk and other dairy products supposedly contaminated, right? Or fear of contamination. That's really what it was, fear of contamination. Hundreds of millions of pigs being destroyed just in China alone because of the quote-unquote Rona. So I want y'all to wake up, because what's happening, as I said, is this is, it's not just in the United States, but that's where you live, and it's worldwide. And then, of course, a couple of weeks ago, the blockage of the Suez Canal, which is responsible for, it's a major artery of trade around the world. So that has thrown off the supply chain for months. And some of that supply was actually animals. Many say this is deliberate. I agree with them. And what I want you to do is to, number one, start growing a little food at home. putting aside food, getting prepared so that, and starting to fast regularly every single week so your body is not in charge, so you know what it feels like to go for a few days without food, build up to it, so that you are not in a position where you will make an eternal decision for something that is temporary. And also want to remind you that all of this is designed because God is in control. And even when you watch a little show like mine, where I have 400 or so subscribers, and certainly hope to be much larger by the end of the year, but a little show like mine, that's one of the ways that God is trying to get to you and to prepare you for what's happening. So while they go crazy and do nonsensical things like remove food items, and again, I meant to say earlier, if you read your Bible, Genesis 2, you will understand that God never intended for us to eat animals in the first place. That only happened after the flood. Now, why he allowed it then, I don't know, but those are the facts. Your body is made to be plant-based, not animal-based. Animals were made to be our companions and to teach us about the creativity of God, and for us to marvel at his works, not only in our body and how magnificent it is, though, I routinely stuff mine with cookies. But anyway, it's another show. But also the many things that we learn about the character of God by caring for animals. That's really what it was supposed to be like. And when Jesus comes back and he rules on the earth, that is what it will be like in all of the areas of the earth, except where people still want to rebel. But anyway, this video has gone a little bit longer than I wanted to, but please, y'all, make sure that you do a little research on this, see what's going down, and then don't just, read it, be about it. Start growing some food, plant your little garden on your terrace or in your backyard. I have some videos in Waste Not Wednesdays that should get you started. And you need to start following channels like the Ice Age Farmer. I'll drop his link in the subscription box. He sometimes is anti-black, and so I no longer support him monetarily. But just because he started tripping, it doesn't mean the information that he's given isn't on point. And that's the main thing. So I pick that up and bring it to you. Anyway, that's this week's weekend wrap up. I'm your Negro with Aptitude and host of the Blackboard, Mickee Lee. I'd love for you to drop a comment and let me know if this type of content is valuable to you and what you think about this week's stories. And again, I encourage you to use your time wisely, get close to the Lord, because if you think things are rattling and rolling right now, just wait and buckle up, buttercup. It's going to get worse. Anyway, it's your Negro with Aptitude and host of the Blackboard, Mickee Lee, signing off. And I'll see you in the next video.